Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to the Equipping Leaders podcast. I am your host, Natasha, and today I'm going to talk about the expectations that we place on leaders and that leaders place on themselves. Leadership comes with expectations, and these expectations can really be divided into two areas: what other people expect of leaders and what leaders expect of themselves. I'm going to talk about this in three elements, and that is what is expected of leaders, what leaders expect from themselves, and then an offshoot of that second one, which is what leaders expect of others. There's a lot of literature out in the world that highlights how leaders are supposed to behave above reproach so people can look up to them as something to aspire to be. So while this is a nice sentiment, it's not realistic. As a society, we place unrealistic expectations on leaders, not just at the highest levels of leadership, but at all levels of leadership. Any person who holds a leadership or even management position is expected to understand their job and everyone else's in the organization. They should know how to do everyone's job, but not micromanage anyone. They need to be able to walk people through every aspect of the organization, but also be open to change. And being open to change, they can't change too much because that will confuse people or make them feel alienated. They also have to fit the image of a leader, be a great public speaker, have loads of charisma, be friendly but firm, and about 10,000 other qualities. I could go on and on. So obviously when I say that, it sounds like too much, and that is because it absolutely is. We push our expectations of leaders so far that when they do mess up, it makes people feel like they have to lie, hide it, or reframe it in a way that makes these huge mistakes seem like victories, even though we know in our hearts and in our minds that it is not. Many people have admired a leader at some point, and when that leader does something that is just human, people lose all faith in that person, and they actually start to question a lot of things about where they themselves place their admiration. What we forget in those moments is that we are the ones who place that person on a pedestal. And when you put someone on a pedestal, there's not a lot of room to move around up there. We desperately want this other person to have all these amazing qualities and perspectives that are in alignment with our own, so we can look to someone else for inspiration or guidance or a path to success. We know intellectually that a person cannot meet these unrealistic standards, but we place them on others anyway. And as leaders, we need to understand that people are placing these impossible standards on us as well. So that's not to say that we shouldn't strive to be our best selves, of course, but that is a decision that is up to the individual. We want people to have great character, not just leaders. All people should have great character, and that can differ from person to person. There are, of course, big criminal acts that are pretty standard bad traits across the board, but outside of that, each mindset, each perspective, and every experience results in a diverse individual. So let's shift into what leaders expect of themselves. And this can be a really tricky area. Any good or great leader has high expectations for themselves in multiple areas. And it's important to balance having high expectations with grace for one's humanity. Every person makes mistakes, and we can acknowledge that mistake, what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how to do it better in the future. And when we do that, we can discourage ourselves from blaming or hiding when we make mistakes. It can be a huge growth opportunity. A great reframe for mistakes, and I don't know who the first person who said this was, but the first person I heard say it was Jen Kirkman on her podcast, and she said that there are no mistakes, just decisions. We all make bad or contrary decisions sometimes. Pay attention to where those decisions place you on your path. Pay attention to the feedback you receive from those whose opinions matter to you and how you feel about the direction that decision is taking you. The act of reflection will help you in determining multiple facets of the decision. So maybe you make a bad decision that was bad for your current path, and you realize that, oh man, no, I need to get back on this path. I need to make these other decisions. I need to make some apologies. I need to do these things to get back on that path. Or potentially you make a bad decision for your current path and it takes you to a place where you hadn't even thought of before. And you're like, I actually want to explore this. I want to go down this path and see where it leads me. So So that reflection can really help you flesh out what the result of that bad or contrary decision was. Self-awareness in our expectations can help us not put those expectations on others, which is the third element that we're going to talk about now. I work hard and I work a lot of hours because I want things to be successful, and I want to make sure that every project has the effort that it needs to be the best. And in the past, when those exact expectations went unchecked, if other people were not working the same amount of hours and putting in the same perceived effort, then I assumed they didn't care and that they didn't know how to work hard. That was a perspective. It was my perspective, and it worked for me and my actions and the way I lived my life. But when I took that and I placed it on these other people, not only was it very unfair, but it was not accurate. Each person brings their own work ethic to the workplace, and we cannot assume that the way we contribute is equal to the mindset and efforts of how other people contribute. If there are workplace expectations that everyone must share, of course you want to make sure those are clear and expressed consistently and across multiple mediums. And it's also important to be clear when you're expressing a workplace expectation that everyone is following versus a personal expectation. And remember also that not all personal expectations need to be voiced to others. It is completely okay to keep personal expectations to yourself. When it comes to leadership and expectations, another facet of this is expectation management, especially for leaders in the workplace. Something that I like to say at work is, the truth at this time is, because we all face many changes each day. And in that moment, that is the truth. But 5 minutes from now, that could change. So even though 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic introduced a new way that the workplace was hard to plan for, we didn't have a vaccine, we didn't know what the timeline looked like for that, there are a lot of elements of the workplace that are unpredictable even outside of that. It's always been unpredictable in a lot of different ways. It's a leader's responsibility to prepare their teams for potential changes and provide information without causing confusion with a million what-if scenarios. A way that I like to encourage leaders to frame this is even if, instead of what if. Even if we have to go to 100% telework, we can still get this project done on time because there are 3 pieces that are needed. These are the people who are working on each piece, and they will still have the resources to get them done. With what if thinking, it can easily lead to catastrophizing. Like, what if the building shuts down and we can't come to work? And then it spirals from there. Before your team even gets there, jump in with the even if and manage expectations by reminding them of the resources that will still be available and the communication mediums that will be leveraged. And make sure to keep that communication going. Keep in mind that when things change, even if you provide all this information and you've given them the even if, there will still be folks who are going to struggle. They are panicking and they are adjusting. So you have to be sure to give them the support and encouragement that they need so they can get back in step with the rest of the team. Thank you for listening to the Equipping Leaders podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha or on Twitter at Natasha Cheyenne. Please join me next time for more insight and resources to equip leaders.